Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Foraker, and I am an Associate Director in Osborne Clarke's Planning and Environment team. Welcome to part two of Big Solar, where in part one we explored some of the changing landscapes of solar, including the new draft government policy and support and the rise in large-scale solar. In part two, we look at three hot topics in the consenting of solar projects. Josh Taylor, a Senior Associate in our Planning and Environment team, is here again to explain some of these topics based on our experience in this sector. So, Josh, hi.
Hi.
Hi. Can you tell us a little bit about the potential issues or hot topics that you're seeing in consenting these large-scale solar projects at the moment?
Yeah, no problem. I think the first thing to say is an obvious point, really, in that each project in each scheme has its own unique impacts and its own consenting risks. But I'll draw on three fairly common hot topics in consenting energy projects, and specifically solar. The first one being the need case, and need and speed, really. There's an awareness, as we touched on in part one, and a drive for these large-scale energy projects, and it's now supported in the national policy statements. And at the same time, there's obviously a need to try and get to net zero and to speed things up in consenting these renewable energy projects. But coupled with that, there's more savvy and well-funded opposition groups who are now quite well versed in the DCO consenting regime. And added to this, there's inevitably going to be more projects coming forward. So there's more cumulative impacts, whether that be in connection with the solar site itself or its grid route, because there's obviously more projects in proximity to one another. So whilst there is political support and a clear need case for renewable energy projects, it doesn't necessarily make the consenting picture any easier. So there's a delicate balance needed between speed and fairness. And I suppose this stresses the importance of early engagement, bringing the public and consultees along with you and getting your mitigation right.
Thanks, Josh. That's really interesting. And can you tell us now about the second hot topic that you're seeing in solar at the moment?
Yeah, slightly linked to the first topic. There's a lot of attention on agricultural land, really, and the potential loss of agricultural land from solar projects and what's called best and most versatile land. So councils, locals and farmers are very aware of this, in that solar projects are potentially taking agricultural land out of circulation. The draft energy policy statements, they do recognise that land use should not be a predominant factor in site selection when you're choosing your solar site. And this is a helpful clarification, but with the sheer number and size of these projects coming forward, there will inevitably be loss to agricultural land and BMV land. And I think we're yet to really see the weight that government will give to this in the decision-making process and as part of their balancing exercise, because a lot of these projects are quite new and because obviously the draft policy is quite new. So I think it's therefore important that projects justify their loss of agricultural land and do what they can to mitigate that loss through embedded techniques in their construction methods and through good design, really, to help as part of that balancing exercise.
Okay, sure. And so that's definitely a tricky one, especially with concerns over food security and wider carbon footprints linked to importing food from abroad. So, Josh, what about the third hot topic?
Yeah, the third hot topic is around alternatives. And it's a well-established principle in planning law and policy, really, that a scheme should be judged on its own merits. And arguably, it doesn't have to be the best scheme or on the best site, but rather its benefits must outweigh its impacts in order for it to be granted consent. And that's a principle that's often tested, really, and pushed by locals and opposition groups. And I think we're likely to see that scrutinised further, really, in view of the government's recent decision on the Aquin interconnector, which is the UK-France interconnector, and in which the government refused the interconnector on the grounds that more appropriate alternatives to the proposed route had not been fully considered. And so whilst there are exceptional and unique circumstances to this Aquin case, I think it does stress the need for a robust pre-application process and a pre-application audit trail, really, and having a clear site selection chapter in the environmental statement.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Josh. That's been really interesting to hear the hot topics, but also the positivity for utility scale solar. And I think it's fair to say we both agree that the government expects solar together with wind to be the predominant source of energy generation by 2050. So to steal a phrase from Solar Energy UK, the future is bright and the future is solar. So thanks very much to all for listening, and thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Anna.